So I wanted to start this final class together by just kind of going back and reviewing what we learned, some of the truths that we discovered about who we are and how we work, right? In a very real way, mindfulness is just, it's this kind of thrilling process of figuring out how do we work, right? The human experience is so complex, right? You have hundreds of ideas, thousands of ideas being spewed out every day, thousands of emotions being spewed out, all these needs, all these conflicting desires and needs all at the same time. It's very complex to be a human being. And so, I think there's some value in just kind of simplifying and reviewing the things that we learned about this experience, okay? And when I say learn, I hope it's not just, oh yeah, I learned it because this guy at the front of the room told me this stuff, right? I hope it's to a large degree because you guys in meditation have had some chances to glimpse some of these truths and kind of see that some of the stuff that I'm saying makes sense. There's an awesome quote by the Buddha that I love and I think about quite a bit. It says, just as a goldsmith would test his gold by burning, cutting, and rubbing it, so you must examine my words before accepting merely out of reverence for me, right? And just for the record, I think any philosophy or tradition where the leader says, hey, don't take my word for it, like go figure it out, go see for yourself, I think it's like a good sign that they're on the right track, right? As opposed to beneath me. Okay, so what do we learn? We learn that we have this wonderful portable anchor to the present moment, which is our breath, right? Or any sensations in the body that feel comfortable and feel very alive for you. Our body, hopefully, lives in the present moment, 100% in the present moment. So if you are connected to your breath, or if you're connected to the sensations in your body, you cannot be absorbed in the past, and you cannot be afraid of what's going to happen in the future. You're here, right? And you're just in this moment experiencing sensations. And that in itself is a very powerful tool, right? We learned that our brains may be thought factories, but we don't have to believe them all, right? And we learned that we are not our thoughts, even though our thoughts often like to tell us that we are what they say we are, right? We learn that emotions, even the difficult ones, are actually little friends that are telling us what our needs are and what we're needing from moment to moment. And that emotions really only are problematic when we see them as somehow dangerous, right? And have this like strange belief or strange kind of toxic relationship with our emotional space instead of inviting it in and just asking it, what are you trying to tell me, right? We learned that thinking has the ability to add so much suffering, an almost an infinite amount of suffering on top of the normal experience of being a human being, which already has its own emotional ups and downs, right? But thinking can add so much to that. And lastly, last week we learned that love, compassion, and forgiveness are much more unconditional when we treat them as choices and actions instead of feelings that come and go. Right? Okay. It's a lot of good wisdom for 6 weeks. And there's something that's kind of lovely about all these truths. There's something kind of universal about them, right? That anyone can treat their minds and their bodies as a laboratory and investigate and look inside and see them for themselves, regardless of your age, your history, your religion, your race, your background, whatever is human is able to be explored and discovered. And that's what's kind of lovely about these truths. So, interesting question is, as this comes to a close, now what, right? Where do we go from here? How do you continue to practice this and deepen your exploration of some of these ideas, right? There's probably some of you that know that there's different personalities, right? There's some personalities, and this is very much me, who will learn something new and just go all in, hog wild, read all the books, like do intense meditation retreats, et cetera, and then maybe get super burned out after like 3 months and then quit. Or there's some people that will do that and keep it for the rest of their life. And then there's other people that will learn something new and then they'll kind of just get busy. All our students, that happens, and it kind of like leaves the mind a little bit. There's this kind of out of sight, out of mind experience. But there's something also interesting about truths, in that they're like little seeds that get planted. I think in one of the sessions I was like, you can't unhear what I told you, right? So what I really mean by that is everything that we shared, they're little seeds that were planted and that are going to naturally grow in your life whether you like it or not, right? You learn some interesting facts about how you work and how to have a more harmonious relationship with your thoughts and emotions. And life has this very interesting way of bringing you back to those truths, and bringing you back to whatever tools you have available to yourself anytime life gets hard, right? Have you guys experienced that at all? Where, I mean, a lot of people, will go, a couple months without going to church. The second life gets really, really hard, they're like, God, whatever, right? Dude, like, and you ask them for all the things. And there's something to the fact that you're in the stream, and it's going to slowly take you into a more awakened place over time. The only question is, how fast does it happen, and whether or not you treat mindfulness as like a kind of like a fair weather friend that is something that's okay, it's cool there in the background, but you only will use it when life gets really, really hard, right? So let's say you don't want to be a fair weather friend to mindfulness. Like, what are some ways to continue to build this practice into your lives? So one is by creating a regular meditation practice. That's the first thing I would say. So the important thing I want to say about this, there's this weird like little sensitivity that happens when people are like, you need to meditate, right? It's almost like you need to pray every day or whatever. Like there's almost this like a ball and chain kind of feel to it. Couple things I want to say about building a regular meditation practice. It's much more important that it's consistent than that there's a certain amount of time dedicated to it every day. So like even me who's in this program right now, I just do 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, which isn't a nuts time commitment by any means, right? But even if you just did 10 minutes a morning, you're deepening the skills, and it's like this kind of daily reminder that there is this set of tools that are available to you. Does that make sense? So consistency is much more important than like saying, I'm going to do this for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, whatever it is, right? And if you do decide that that's something you would like to build into your life, and it feels like a chore or a burden, something's wrong, right? It usually means there's some sort of belief there that this is like some barrier I need to get past in order to, start my real life, right? So if that's the case, just kind of explore like why are you doing this? Why is this important, right? Again, we're training our minds to be better noticers. We're training this noticer, right? And when we train the noticer, we are able to catch the thoughts and the beliefs that make us miserable quicker and put the kibosh on them, right? And we catch the emotions that are experiencing so that we can attend to them quicker and meet those needs, as opposed to like 10 years going by and like there's the same like nagging emotion telling you maybe you're in the wrong job or something, and this lets us live more fulfilling and happier lives. That's why you're doing it. And it just kind of feels good to like not be, to take a little step out of life for a moment and not be completely absorbed into your thinking and your work and school and everything. So that's just a couple thoughts about building a regular practice of mindfulness into your life. Another way to integrate it into life is to do a retreat. And that might sound also kind of crazy and scary. I've been on a few in my life, and I've realized that, while it is something that you have to take yourself out of life to do for 3, 4, sometimes 10 days, there's nothing that like deepens your practice and makes you really, really understand how all this stuff works more than a retreat. So one that I'll just put on your radars because as students, it is free. There are these Vipassana retreats through the tradition of S.N. Goenka. In the Canvas, I uploaded the website and a little blurb about what it is. But this is the one I was telling you guys about. It's 10 days, and it's totally silent and free, and they're taking care of you the entire time. So they, make all your meals. You have lodging. There's a teacher that you can meet with at lunch. There's a lunch break. You can meet with them by appointment. But you can imagine meditating 10 hours a day for 10 days straight. You are face to face with yourself in a way that you have never been before, and that might sound scary, but it creates this like intimacy and understanding about what's actually alive inside of you that you otherwise wouldn't really have access to. So it's really powerful. I recommend it. I've never done one. I was like, man, I wish I didn't do that. And the cool thing is they won't even let you pay the first time you do it, but they offer the possibility of a donation afterwards, but it's completely up to you, which I think also is a great model. Like any models where they're not asking you for money right away is kind of a sign that it's legit, right? There's of course reading books. I've read about 7,000 books on meditation in my life. And I made a list also in Canvas of a few of my favorites. And if you ever are looking for recommendations based on something specific, you can always reach out to me. But yeah, reading is a great way to deepen your understanding of these ideas. We also have local meditation centers in San Diego, like a lot of them. Some of you are going to UCSD. Are any of you going to UCSD? Yeah, are you too? Oh, sweet. Yeah, so UCSD has a rad mindfulness center where they're actually doing research there too. SDSU has a mindfulness center. Did you know that? Yeah. So SDSU has a mindfulness center. And then there's all sorts of different Zen centers and meditation centers throughout San Diego, which a quick Google search will let you know. I'm hoping to build some sort of program here at Cuyamaca, but sadly I'm losing most of you anyway. So, and lastly, one of the greatest ways to build this in your life is what we're going to learn today, which is this RAIN practice. And the acronym RAIN stands for Recognize, Allow, Investigate, Nurture. And it's a way of bringing some insight, peace, or balance to some area of discomfort in your life, right? Some area of something that's problematic or troubling. It could be if you find yourself stuck acting a certain way in a relationship, right? Or a certain, not just romantic relationships, but between parents, siblings, friends, right? Are you doing the same stuff over and over again and you're not quite sure why it's happening? For me, withdraw. It's my big thing that I've had to work on over life, right? If I feel hurt, I withdraw instead of tending to the relationship, separate, and that's never a good thing, right? Unless it's just for a little while to cool down. Are you wondering whether you should take some new job, right? Or are you unhappy in your job and you're wondering, is there something else that I should be doing, right? Are you feeling some sort of shame about something that you need process and understand why exactly you're feeling that way? Is there like some sense of worry that you can't even name that's just kind of hovering in the background and you're not quite sure what, right? So all of these could be anything that is some area of difficulty or discomfort in your life. And the premise is, and I've mentioned this before, but this is so important. There is so much more wisdom like living inside of our emotions and our minds than we ever give ourselves credit for. So many of the answers that we look for, very often we're looking elsewhere. We're looking, in books, or just avoid them altogether, or in therapy, which I think therapy is a wonderful thing and some people should do it. But I think often there's answers that, because your therapist doesn't even know you as well as you know yourself, that you can answer for yourself using this set of practices, which is basically putting together all of what we learned in one process, okay? So how does it work? So first thing you do, and I encourage you to start pondering this now. Hopefully it's not super distracting and you won't be just thinking about it, but just ponder what is an area in your life right now where you do feel some sort of conflict, some sort of discomfort. I want to emphasize this process is different than the forgiveness meditation that we did last week. Forgiveness meditation, you have one specific goal. You're trying to develop compassion and see if you can loosen up your emotions around some experience to allow yourself to forgive yourself or somebody else, right? This is much more open-ended, right? The answer could be anything about any conflict ever, right? So it's a much more varied, diversified, open possibility sort of exercise. So bring to mind some area of difficulty or conflict that you would like to find balance, peace, or insight around, all right? And again, this shouldn't be a 10 on the trauma scale. We're practicing something here that's like, a medium or mild discomfort. And so while I show all these steps, I'm gonna relate it to a specific instance where I used RAIN in my life about a conflict that I was having. Okay, so at around 2009, I was in graduate school at UCSD in physics department, and I had just left law school, where I left law school after a year of law school, and before that I was in the physics graduate program. So I was bouncing back and forth between graduate programs and totally confused about what I wanted to do. And then I get this crazy harebrained idea in my head that I should teach high school. And I was like, oh no, you can't do that, right? And so I was like, it felt right to teach, and yet I was in these programs and didn't know if I should leave. And that is, I don't know if you know, but a hell of a conflict, right? Because it's like especially when you're in the middle of it, it feels like your whole life depends on this. So I applied this practice to this question, right? And I made some serious progress. And as I share each step, I'm going to show you what I did and what progress I made. Okay, so I have my area of difficulty. First step is called recognize. And that means you just, in meditation, bring up that difficulty into your awareness. And often it helps to think about the worst part of it, right? So if it's a conflict with another person, maybe it's you looking at them or seeing them say something, right? Or if it's like some shame, maybe you're looking at, the thing that you did that you feel ashamed of, but you want to go to that place where you're feeling the most stuff and thinking the most stuff. And recognize just means recognizing what's there, right? What are the thoughts that are coming up around this? What are the emotions? Name them if it helps. And don't feel like anything's off limits. Just look at everything with the same kind of warmth. And that transitions very quickly into the second step, which is allow. So in this step, you practice kind of what we were doing with mindfulness of emotions. We were practicing just letting this stuff be there without asking it to be any different than it is, it helps to sometimes think of, whatever it is your ideal, kind of archetype of love in your life. So like it could be a parent, it could be a religious figure, it could be your puppy, it could be whatever lets you have that feeling of like tender care the most. Bring up that image and kind of cradle all that stuff and hold it there, because that's where all the answers are, right? Your emotions are telling you so. They're there for a reason, right? There's some wisdom that they're telling you something, and your thoughts are also telling you something. Where is your head going? What are you believing about this, right? So thoughts tell you what you're believing, emotions tell you what you're needing. This is a good kind of motto that helps us kind of explore why these things have certain answers to the questions of our life. So hold all that stuff there, invite it, make it feel safe, make it know you're not pushing it away, and then that transitions. Okay, so what did I feel when I was doing that? When I was recognizing that in this situation, I felt this tightness, right? And this conflict, that tightness that comes with conflict, where you're like, you're not sure what decision, so you're almost like feeling stuck in a way. I had thoughts like, I'm never gonna figure this out, right? I'm never gonna know what to do with my life. I had fear, right? There's some fear with that. Like, am I gonna be able to take care of myself? Am I gonna be able to take care of future family, right? I felt shame, like my life wasn't supposed to go this way. Like I did really good in high school. I did really good in undergrad. I should know exactly what I'm doing in life, right? I had the whole plan, right? And I had the thought, I should know what I want to do, right? This word should, by the way, is whenever you see it in your brain, in a thought, alarm bells should go off, right? Should, behind every should, there's some belief, right? And usually it's a mistaken belief. There's very few shoulds in life, right? There's, should I know what I'm gonna do? No, it happens at its own rate, right? We ripen at our own pace. Certain experiences will let me know what's the right thing to do. Should I know who's the one? No, not necessarily, right? Every time you say should, you're forcing yourself into this box about how life should look, and it's not necessarily that way. My wife says, stop shoulding all over yourself, which I think is brilliant way to, because it does feel that way. Okay, so when I allowed, I just cradled all that stuff, right? I let these thoughts come in without them, without losing myself in them, just like noticing them as they came and noticing all that fear and that tightness and that constriction, okay? The I step then is to investigate, right? This is when we now start exploring all that stuff inside of us and asking ourselves all the important questions, right? Which could be, what is the worst part of this, right? What is the worst part of this, and what is the belief behind that worst part? So what am I buying that is making this somehow feel worse? Am I buying some thought about that me being disrespected, me being unloved, me being worthless, me being with someone else like being unfair or unjust, right? What are the thoughts that are fueling that emotion, right? And is there a lot of dirty pain there? Am I adding a lot of pain just to some raw experience, right? And then you might turn to your feelings and ask, what are you needing right now? What do you need from me? And all of this investigation should be done with a genuine curiosity. So a lot of times it's really easy to fall in this trap of like, I want the answers, I want them now, just to feel better, right? But that's, like, in what relationship does that work, right? If you go up to somebody that you care about and say, I'm demanding answers. No, you have to be genuinely curious, right? If you're like ever having an argument with somebody, you want to look, so why do you feel that way? Like, what do you need from me that would, make you not feel that way or make this conversation go a little bit better? Does that make sense? So see if you're falling into that trap of, this is, I'm just doing this to feel better and I don't really care about my experience. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay, all right, so when I was investigating this question inside of me, this is what came up. First of all, I put my attention on just this idea of being a teacher. And the first thing I noticed is I had this flush of peace, right? It felt great. There was like a rightness to it. Raise your hand if you've ever had that place where like you had some sort of conflict, you thought about something, and then one choice, there was just this rightness to it, even if it wasn't the easy choice. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so that is always a good sign, right? It's always a sign that you're on the right track when there's just this feeling of peace and rightness around some choice. But then behind the peace, of course, there is like little fears, right? Some of the fears were, I had told everyone in my life that I was getting this PhD or that I was getting this law degree, right? So there's this social pressure. I was inventing some social pressure. I'm not doing this for anybody else, right? But there was a part of me where my identity was tied up in this idea of being a doctor, being a JD, right? And so my ego, my sense of self was like, I don't want that. That's small, right? To be a high school teacher, what? And I had to just laugh at that voice that was telling me that somehow impressing other people was more important than the choice that was actually the most peaceful. This is so easy to do. It's so easy to start making decisions based upon other people's expectations of you. And there's often something to that, especially like, let's say you're married or something and you have a steady job and you want to go be a wildlife photographer in Africa, right? Maybe you talk about that one a little bit with your wife or husband, right? But especially at this age, we're living lives for ourselves, right? We're discovering what is our one unique way of contributing to the world. And at this point, the considerations of other people can often get in the way of those decisions and what just feels the most right. And I also had this feeling that I was letting people down also, right? Notice that almost everything that came up was not about me, but was actually about other people. So being aware of all that stuff, right? That was just my thoughts and my emotions were telling me all these answers, right? And as soon as I did this, I was like, oh, dude, it's obvious. I'm gonna go be a teacher. And I started making all the phone calls to parents and other loved ones that should know that I was gonna do this. And it wasn't even that bad. They're like, oh, thank God, glad you finally know what you want to do. So sometimes it's not even as bad as we think it's going to be, right? Okay. Once this process happens, it's very possible that new emotions arise. Sometimes it's peaceful, relaxing. Sometimes there's more fear, like, oh, now I got some stuff that I got to do that's not easy. And so this last step, nurture, and for nurture, is kind of this idea of, all right, now that we kind of did this operation on ourselves, can we sew up the wound and put a little balm, right? So we want to take that loving presence that we thought about when we were allowing everything and just nurture what's there inside of us to the greatest degree possible, right? If something's a little bit scared about the next decision you have to make, let it know that you're there for it as well, right? If something now seems kind of vulnerable, ask that vulnerable place also, what does that mean? If you just feel this amazing rush of peace, give yourself a pat on the back, right? Whatever you may be needing in terms of nurturing that experience, this is the time to do it, okay? So that's the process of rain. And as you can see, it can be kind of powerful, right? I feel like in a couple days of doing this process, I was able to get more insight than an entire summer of writing pros and cons lists. about which decision was best. Just to say one more example of rain really quick that is a bit more vulnerable to share, a little bit heavier to share, but I think also just reveals how powerful it can be. It involved a conflict that I was having with my mother. And just as I start the story, I just want to say my mother, I'm absolutely positive, loves me as much as she possibly can in the best way that she knows how. And that she was always there in terms of meeting my material and physical needs, right? But I mentioned earlier in this class that there were times where it was difficult for her to understand my emotional needs and to understand what was happening inside me, especially if I was hurt by something that she did, right? It was very hard for her to hear that. And I also mentioned that there's this kind of pattern of withdrawal. It was our thing. We would withdraw. One of us would stop talking to the other person for some indefinite amount of time. And this one time this happened, and sitting on a stand-up paddleboard doing rain in the bay, as you do. And it was feeling like way worse than normal. And I was like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? And so I started doing this, and I started to realize in the allowing and the investigation stage that there was a little boy in there who felt like he had never been parented, right? And it was weirdly devastating for that little boy, right? Because we all enjoy that feeling that you're understood, that you're cared for, that you have this mentor, that somebody's like looking after you in the way that you need to be understood and looked after, right? And as soon as it happened, the grief, the tears just, I was like, I saw him, I was like, I see you, buddy, right? And so then there was this question that was left after this process that was like, all right, so now what, right? I was like, you really got one shot at this. I'm not suddenly gonna have that kind of role model in my life that understands me emotionally the way that I felt like I needed it. And then out comes this other answer, which is, it's not ideal, but you can do it for yourself, right? No one understands you better than you do. And ever since that day, when I feel that need of like to be understood and that kind of just like emotional heaviness where you want a parent to hold you or just to understand you, I sit with myself and play that role for myself. And it's not ideal, it's not perfect, but it's lovely. I feel like I got my back in a way that I never did before. There's a certain strength to that, right? No one can take that away from me. So, just one more anecdote to share how powerful this process can be and the kind of answers that can come out of it. Okay, are you ready to do it? Okay, let's do it. A sip of my special water. So, getting into comfortable but alert posture. If it feels comfortable, closing your eyes. And it's always helpful to take a few moments to watch your body breathe in any meditation. Watching your body breathe wherever you feel it strongest. The nostrils, the chest, the belly. And just letting go of any tension that you feel. Feel any places that are clenched in your face, your forehead. Let it go. Just relax. With each breath, if you can just relax a little bit deeper and let go. Just enjoying the experience of watching your body breathe. Now, turning your attention to some area of difficulty in your life. Could be a conflict with a person, could be a conflict inside yourself, could be some unanswered question that's always in the background, kind of nagging. Could be some regret, could be shame. Be worry, but whatever is that area of difficulty, just let it arise in, like a movie, putting your attention on the part of it that feels the most triggering, the part that makes you feel the most emotions. And when you're there, you start the first step of RAIN, which is just to recognize what's there. Just recognize it. What thoughts are coming up when you bring this area of difficulty to mind? What are you thinking? What judgments are there, either toward yourself or to another person? What emotions are bubbling up to the surface? Whatever's there, just be kind to it. If you want to use that analogy of inviting your monsters in fatigue, to see them all as these little thoughts and feelings all sitting around a table. And here we move to the second step of RAIN, which is whatever's there, just allow it to be there. And notice that allowing doesn't mean that you like feeling these emotions, or that you like that these thoughts are in your head. Whether or not you like it is irrelevant. It's just that you're making room for them, making a home for them, because they're a part of you. And they deserve to be seen and understood too. So just making space for them and not asking these emotions and feelings and judgments and thoughts to be any different than they are. If it helps to imagine someone or something that embodies love for you, like maybe a parent or a child or a pet or a religious figure. Whatever inspires the deepest and greatest sense of love, channel that as you allow all these thoughts and feelings to be there. This love helps make space for difficult feelings. It makes those feelings feel safe and invited. Because again, they have a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of answers there. It might help bring peace or insight or balance. Now that we've made space for all these feelings, let's begin the I step of RAIN, which is to investigate. Maybe you want to start with the question of what is the worst part about this? And is there anything that I'm believing that's adding to this worst part? Am I somehow believing that I'm small or disrespected or unloved? Am I believing that somebody acted unfairly? Look at the emotions. See if they're needing anything from you. Do they just need to be seen? Do they need to be understood? A lot of times they might ask you to take some action, right? They might tell you that they want you to apologize. Or they might tell you that they want you to stand up for yourself, for your emotions or your needs. They might need any one of a million things. See if you can tune in to what they're really asking for. What would bring them peace? If there is some answer, thank them and let them know that you'll put that under consideration and do the best you can. If there isn't any answers, that's okay too, because you're at least working in harmony now with your truth, with your experience, with what's real, with what's happening. And that harmony in and of itself, that not resisting, that in itself brings more peace and more balance to some conflict. Just take one last look and see if there's anything else that your thoughts are telling you, or your beliefs are telling you, or your emotions are sharing. You can thank them. Transition to the last step of rain, which is nurture. First thing we do here is just to notice how you're feeling. How has your reality shifted from when you first brought to mind this area of difficulty? Feel a little lighter, or you might not. You might feel more vulnerable in a way. Whatever it is that you feel, just hold it and breathe with it. Do notice a vulnerable, tender part of you. Just kind of notice where it lives. Just imagine the most wisest version of yourself, the most wisest, caring version of yourself. This intelligent, empathic being that you know that you are underneath everything else. Just touch that vulnerable place and let it know it's okay. Present with everything you're feeling, everything you are. And let in any healing that wants to happen. Feel what that feels like. Heal a wound and be tender to a wound. And slowly bring your attention back to your body breathing. just release while your body's moving.